Before I begin today, I just have a quick correction to make. Yesterday, I said that Connor Keefe perjured himself, which that part's true. He lied when he said that he was the only member of law enforcement that was in the room when Dr. Scorty Bello was performing the autopsy. That is not true. He lied on the stand. He perjured himself. There was someone else in the room. There was a photo of two men, and the photo was captioned Proctor and Keefe, but it wasn't Proctor. It is a gentleman by the name of Trooper Watson. That's a brand new name. I have no idea who that guy is. It's hard to tell because they all have this one distinguishing feature. Don't make me say it. Okay, so the big thing is that Judge Bev is going to allow Hank Brennan to introduce this new modified report, which also contains a modified timeline of the exact time he thinks that Karen Read hit John O'Keefe with her vehicle. Now, this took me a while to understand. It's very confusing and convoluted, but let me see if I can get through it. I've got some notes. Let's go for it. So first, let's go all the way back to April 29th. Ian Whiffen is testifying. Now, Ian Whiffen is an expert that's been called by the prosecution. And Ian Whiffen is walking through the timeline of here's this, here's that, here's what all the Apple data means, here's what all this means. He's meant to bring in that time frame so they can say it happened between this window. The time frame that they're really looking at is 12/31/38. And they're saying it may have been sometime between 12/31/38 and 12/31/43, which is about a 5-second difference. But that's when they said that Karen hit John. But on cross-examination, Ian Whiffen is forced to admit that after that time frame, there are 36 steps registered in John's Apple Health data, and they are 36 steps very specifically in a westerly direction, which would mean from the street to the house. So it makes it look like Hank Brennan has John basically mortally wounded and then yet gets up and walks around. In between there's also a trigger incident where the phone was locked. So someone pushed the side button to manually lock John's phone during those 36 steps. Now, on that same day, they do the voir dire for the ARCA guys. Now, if you just remember really quickly, ARCA was hired by the federal government. Nobody knew that they were doing this research behind the scenes. The feds basically gave them, I think it was 14 pieces of evidence, and they were told to look for two things. Is this the bodily injury that would happen if it got hit by this SUV? And does this SUV show signs of hitting a human? Those are the two things that they were expected to do. And they did it, and they turned in their report. Because they were hired by the feds, the report was available to both the prosecution and the defense. I think the prosecution was like, no, that disproves everything. We don't want to use that. But the defense was like, I think you're onto something. So the defense starts talking to the ARCA guys. Now that their contract with the feds are over, they can be hired by the defense. So the defense is like, we're going to hire you. We want you to come testify on our behalf. Now, because they've been hired by the defense, the defense can now share with them more information that's coming in. The prosecution is required to, because of disclosure laws, they are required to share every single bit of their case against Karen Read with Karen Read's defense. So Alan Jackson gets that stuff and he's like, here's the time frame they're looking at, here's what they say happens, here's how they say it happens, and he's giving it to the ARCA guys for them to disprove. So all this time, the ARCA guys have been doing, not that their original testimony wasn't gangbuster, because it is, but they've been adding to it because now they're getting fed this disclosure information from the prosecution. So they know what the prosecution's case is, and they're working to defeat it. During this voir dire, Hank really thinks he can get these guys tossed out. And the reason he thinks he can get these guys tossed out is because he's accusing them of having inappropriate conversations with the defense. How did you come into this case? Hank doesn't want to admit the fact that the feds hired them and that they were allowed to be used for either side. And the defense was the one that called them and put them under contract and hired them because the prosecution didn't like the information. Maybe Lolly didn't even read it. I don't fucking know. But the prosecution didn't hire them, so the defense is allowed to hire them. Hank really thought he could go into text messages and, you called him by his first name, you must be buddy. So he's trying to dispel the fact that they're really the experts that they are, and he tried to get them thrown out. He did not get them thrown out. They get to testify for the defense. So Hank needs to come up with another alternative. Now, because the ARCA guys are still getting information from the defense, they're continuing to run tests and find ways to dispel all of this information. Judge Bev gives them a deadline of May 7th. She's like, I want everything you're going to talk about in court to be submitted by May 7th. They submit it by May 7th. But on May 8th, Hank says, completely unsolicited, he gets a new report from his expert. Now, his experts work for a company called Aperture LLC. I know one of them's name is Dr. Burgess, and Dr. Burgess is the one that authors this report. He sends it over to Hank. Hank claims he didn't ask for it. This is just something that Dr. Burgess submitted. Now, there's mention in Dr. Burgess's new report that he's adjusted the timeline to be more in sync with Ian Whiffin's timeline, which essentially means that he's changing it to match what was said during Ian Whiffin's testimony. Now, this, of course, upsets the defense because every single witness who's not testified yet is forbidden from watching other people's testimony. They're under a sequestration order. So the defense is like, wait a minute, how did he know what Ian did in his testimony? So have they been watching the trial? So they're accusing Dr. Burgess of maybe watching witness testimony when he wasn't supposed to be. Brennan tries to write this all off by saying, the timeline didn't change. Yes, it did. In fact, they changed it to 40 seconds later, which would be after the 36 steps, which would be after the manual phone lock. That's when she must have hit him. It throws off the rest of their timeline. They moved this front part back, but didn't figure out how to move the back part different. So it still throws off the entire time frame. They're just grasping at straws at this point. But it's very suspicious that they would suddenly just give this new report to Hank Brennan with all of the revised time frame after Ian Whiffin testified, and now it perfectly matches what was said during Ian Whiffin's testimony. Now, in letting the new report in, Bev did tell Alessi that he would have a lot of leeway in the cross-examination of the two experts from Aperture. And she said he could recall witnesses because that's the defense's case. They're like, we've had people up on the stand and we have like nailed them down to this time frame. And we have said, you know, are you sure this is when it happened? Are you sure this has happened? And they're like, yeah. They've sworn under oath. Now all their testimony, basically, I guess they all lied in their testimony if the time frame is going to change. Now I'm petty AF. I would recall everybody. I would just do it for fucking fun. I would recall everybody and just put them all through it again because I'm that way. Alessi will be better at it, but I do absolutely think when she says you'll get leeway, he's going to take every inch. This is just an absolute Hail Mary by Hank Brennan. I believe he's lost the jury and he's trying to do everything he can to try and remedy a situation here. But this is on him. He is the one that stood up in opening statements and said 12/31/38. And I remember at the time I thought, wow, why did he's changed the time frame. This is interesting. And he worked so hard to build the case around that time and it's all fallen apart on him. He's 40 seconds off. So that's got to be pretty embarrassing. And he's trying to do anything he can to remedy this. If you want my opinion, he lost to the jury all the way back on April 29th because there's no way you sit through Ian Whiffin's cross-examination and you don't do the mental math and you think, wait a second. If this is the time he allegedly got hit by the car, how is someone using the side push button to lock his phone this many seconds later? That tells the jury either John was alive and well and shutting off his own phone as he walked in the house, or somebody else had John's phone, which means someone saw John laying on the lawn and has lied about it the entire time. So either way, it's bad for the prosecution. So we're going to wait and see how the defense handles this. I think Alessi's going to recover very nicely, and I think he's going to recall witnesses, make this even worse for Brennan.